Well, guys, it's me, Garrett, and Colt. Say hi, Colt. Say hi. Right in the middle of everything, ain't you? Well, it's June 25th, Sunday afternoon, just like it was June 25th, Sunday afternoon in 1876. And I just thought I'd kind of come up here on the grassy hill here north of where I live and sit here and think about some things. This is the exact day of the week, almost the exact hour that George Armstrong Custer and his guys were getting wiped out on a hill, almost exactly. You can see down there we have our own little village down there on the creek and the river where they meet. And up here it's almost exactly like where Custer was. There's no cover up here. It is about 96 degrees. Right now it might be a little later than exactly when he was getting wiped out, because that whole fight, basically, the way I understand it, started around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It's about 4 o'clock right now, so it might be right in there. But I thought I'd come up here and kind of experience this for myself. There's no cover on this hill. If you look behind me, nothing whatsoever, just like that hill would have been. We do know from records that it was very hot that day. A few clouds, no clouds today, up above me anyway. But that sun is beating down on me, and I'm in wool clothes, of course not in military clothing, but it is still canvas and wool. And it's nice and warm, I can tell you that much. Now, the reason I'm doing this on my channel instead of the 11 Bang Bang channel is the more videos I do on this, the more I realize people are still very divided on this. And I'm not going to do or say anything that's going to change anybody's mind. But I want you to bear in mind that, you know, in the 1800s when all this was going down, of course it was one side, the natives, that were very villainized, and then it seems like we've changed, swung completely the other way to where no native did anything wrong whatsoever in their entire life. And nowadays there's the villains are definitely all the 7th Cavalry. Now, here's the thing. I'm sitting on this hill kind of in the same position they would have been that day. I even have my original trapdoor saddle ring carbine here. Yeah, I know it's got a refinished stock, but, and by the way, this is a 77. That trapdoor on the back there, the whole reason it's there is because of Custer, because it actually contains, oops, sorry, covered you up, actually contains a 3-piece cleaning rod to clear a jam should you get it. Not that the Springfield carbine needed, not that the Springfield carbine cost them that fight in any way, shape, or form. It was just, it was a massive mess. That's what it was, and that's what happens when you have bad leadership. Massive mess occurs. Now, if you'll notice, I'm shaking everything around and things are changing. Down on the river and places like that, I can find a tree or something to prop my phone up on. There's nothing up here. No cover, no tree, not even a bush. Just kind of like they were facing. And I have to stop right now at this point in time and think about the feelings and the adrenaline and things that were pumping through those guys at that point. What is it, 147 years ago? I haven't done the math on it exactly. Something like that, but a Sunday afternoon. Hot, June 25th, Sunday afternoon. And I got a feel for them. We always seem to think of the little bighorn when we think of the U.S. side of the confrontation. The only person we think about is Custer. Well, those 260 guys on that hill with him didn't have a choice. And they just got themselves in a mess. Now, he had quite a bit of choice. He had quite a bit of opportunity to turn things around. Those guys with him didn't. And I got a feel for them as thousands and thousands of warriors basically would have been coming, boiling up that hill from that tree line right here on top of you, right up here. It would have been unbearable. And I also have to think about a lot of those guys had wives and kids at home, and the word had to be brought to them that they'd been wiped out. And there's people that still argue the politics of that to this day. And I'll tell you kind of where I stand, since this is my channel and I can say what I want. But you see me, I'm never really dressed in military clothes. Definitely not dressed as a native. What you see right here is what you would have got if it was 147 years ago me. a farmer slash cowboy, immigrant, whatever you want to call it, just the homesteader trying to make a living out here on these very hills. And I would be sitting here probably mad at the government for poking the Indians, and mad at the Indians because I probably lost a few friends in this mess. And that's just the long and short of it. Now, all I'm saying is we can't look at history with our present beliefs. We really can't. Sure, nobody's rode in recently and took my land away from me, what I was living on. And I would be fighting mad and probably out to kill if they had. And you have to remember, why did Custer get wiped out so fast? I believe it was because those natives were protecting the women and children, at least in their mind, and maybe possibly very so, that were encamped at the bottom of that hill. Nothing in the world was going to save Custer at that point. He could have had machine guns, and he probably wouldn't have been able to take down those fathers and husbands that were there protecting their family. You'll notice by the time the natives got to Benteen, they were far enough away from the camp, I felt like, that they probably weren't fighting so hard to save their families as they were just to let them know, hey, we're here, stay back. But Custer rode right into the middle of their village, and so they were doing everything they could to fight to save their families. And you would too. Same thing kind of goes for the Confederacy of the time, you know. I'm not an ardent believer that everything the government does is correct, let's put it that way. But at the same time, like I said, those poor boys on that hill, they didn't have much of a chance. And it all comes down to who's in charge, I guess, right? And it's not just Custer, it's the people above him. Sheridan, Sherman, Grant, that same group of three people, you know. And it's just something you got to stop and think about. You cannot look at something that happened tragically in the past and view it with today's politics or today's lens. It just doesn't work. You have to go back and look at everything around the situation from the top down to the very bottom. Now then, I'm not saying that every white was wrong in this situation. That definitely was not the case. Country was growing, things were changing. Natives always moved around. Natives moved in on other people. Natives moved in on other native people. It happened all the time. Right here in these very hills where I'm sitting, there had been people that had already been homesteading for several years during that whole mess that got wiped out again. As a matter of fact, right over on Cedar Creek, just to the east of me, 15 people died as a result of, around that era, you know, natives being hyped up and things going on. But yeah, it didn't matter who you are. It was a rough time. You weren't going to get the nobody could live in peace, let's put it that way. Now then, natives believed that the government had lied to them and promises had been broken. That was true. Little Colt's way down there. That was true. To be quite honest, that's something the government's good at. Government promised me that I could keep and bear arms. Funny thing is, today, a pedophile might go to prison for 5 years, but if I take 1/10 of an inch too far off of my shotgun barrel, if I want to cut it down to be a little more handy, I'll go to jail for 15. Prison for 15. Yeah, the government has broke its promise to everybody. And the Indians saw that way ahead of time, shall we say. I guess the whole point of this thing is, I'm sitting on this hill thinking about, in 1876, Americans that died. Americans coming up the hill, and the Americans sitting on the hill. And it's just a good thing to take and study history, study every aspect of it, and don't try to put your political beliefs into it one way or the other. Go back, look around, look at the state of the world at the time, look at the history of the people at the time, and then maybe you'll have a little more open mind as to what's going on, whether it be a poor blue-clad soldier, which isn't my favorite color, but a poor blue-clad soldier sitting on a hill, or a native defending his home at the bottom of the hill. Put yourself somewhere in the middle. Look at history that way, and then make up your mind. Anyway, this has been a fun little talk. I gotta head on back down the hill and take my little trapdoor carbine. By the way, this is a carbine that has got an 1881 date on it. It's actually a star carbine, but it's probably made in 1877. I will video on this gun if you guys want to check it out over on 11 Bang Bang. Just look for original trapdoor carbine. Anyway, we'll see y'all later.